Okay, so today we're going to talk about home theater setup. If you want to set up a surround type of system, then I'm going to show you where you need to place your speakers and your subwoofer. And if you have a soundbar, I'm going to talk about some settings that you might want to adjust to make it sound like you're in a theater. And if you have a receiver or an amplifier that powers regular speakers, I'm going to talk about setting up those too. So grab a pen and a paper and start taking notes. Okay, so if you have a soundbar setup, and depending on what kind of soundbar setup you have, I have one where it comes with the rear speakers. But if you just have the soundbar and the subwoofer, that'll work. So we're going to talk about all those steps. And I'm going to go through some settings on your soundbar that you might want to adjust, especially if you have rear speakers. Okay, so when you set up your home theater setup, you want your TV to be directly in front of you because that's the experience you get when you're at a movie theater. So you don't want to be sitting to the side and turning your head like this to watch the TV. No, you need to be looking forward. Even if you set off a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, but straight in front. And try to set up your TV against a flat wall. Don't try to put it in the corner. You know, some people, they put their TV right in the corner and the TV's like this. Try not to do that. But if you can't, I understand. So try to put it, like I said, against a flat wall. Now, if you mount your TV on the wall, try not to put it above the fireplace. Because you got to think about heat rising. And heat rising is going past your TV. Plus, when you're trying to hook up your soundbar, you don't want the soundbar to be sitting on top of the mantle. It just don't look right. So look for that area in your room, whether it's your den, your basement, or your living room, where you can put it flat against the wall. And if you're using a TV stand, get one that's high as possible. Try to get it off the ground. I've seen some TV stand where the TV is pretty much sitting flush on the ground, but you want it to be as high as possible. So try to get one of those TV stands that make your TV sit like midway off the ground and not too low, because you're trying to get that direct eye contact. Now, this is my recommendation, but if you want to go with the low one, that's up to you. Now let's start off with a soundbar setup. If you're going with a regular soundbar with just a subwoofer, make sure the soundbar is right below the TV as possible. Just like how you see I place my soundbar. And then try to get a system that's wireless. So if it's come with wireless subwoofer and wireless rear speakers, that'll be perfect. Because you don't want wires running all over the place. Especially for those rear speakers. You don't want wires running all the way back to those speakers. Now when it comes to the subwoofer, you can place those pretty much anywhere. Because they're low frequency. And low frequency bass sound comes from anywhere. It's not a direct sound. Unlike the soundbar that's pushing sound towards you. That means the voice and all the shooting sounds and all of that is coming from the speakers. So you want those to come in directly at you. But explosions and heavy bass sound doesn't really come directly. You hear that pretty much all around you anyway. So that's why it's not important for the subwoofer to be in a particular spot, while the soundbar needs to be directly in front of you and as close to the bottom of the TV as possible. You could mount it above the TV, but I would recommend you mount it on the bottom of the TV. And if you decide to wall mount your TV, there's also a wall mount for the subwoofer. Or you can put a shelf under the bottom, you know, just purchase a separate shelf and put the soundbar on top of that, as long as it's below the TV. If your soundbar system comes with rear speakers or you purchase them separately, then you want to put those rear speakers right behind you, as close to that chair as possible. But not too close where it's right in your ear, but not too far away. So look at the distance of where I put my rear speakers and use that as a guide. Your rear speakers doesn't really put out that heavy sound like your front speakers and your subwoofer. That rear speaker is pretty much for stuff creeping up behind you, bullet flying over your head, or any light background music that you hear playing by the orchestra. And it's at a lower volume, so you don't want it too far away from you where you cannot hear those rear sounds. And if you don't want to deal with wires, make sure they are wireless. Now, if you have regular speakers that have speaker wires, I'm going to talk about how you can make those wireless also. Okay, so we covered placement and setup. Now let's talk about the connection. Now, in a video that I did on my channel recommending you use the HDMI ARC port, and the HDMI cable that I would recommend you use is called high-speed HDMI. That cable is built with a little bit more stuff inside it to handle HDR, 4K, and all that stuff. Now, when it comes to your rear speakers that you connect into your soundbar, in the manual, it's going to walk you through the steps of how to get it connected to your soundbar. Now, with the rear speakers, you want to make sure they're compatible with your soundbar. So don't just run out there and buy any rear speakers and then you come back home and then you realize you can't get it connected to your soundbar. So save yourself the frustration and make sure that it will talk to those rear speakers. Now, because there's so much different brands and stuff like that, I'm not going to really go through the setup procedure because it's too much to cover, and each one of them is going to connect differently. For instance, on my setup, there's a button on the bottom of my soundbar that pairs the rear speakers to the soundbar. Now that's how mine works, but yours might pair differently. So I don't want to show you the steps of how to pair the rear speakers to my soundbar and then you go looking for it and it doesn't work because it's a different system. Now, based on the system you have, normally there's going to be volumes for each one of those different set of speakers, and the volume for all the speakers are built into the soundbar, not your TV. When you adjust the volume on your TV, it's just elevating the volume that's going to the soundbar, but the soundbar controls all the speakers that's connected to it. So if you want to adjust the volume to your rear speakers, you're going to need your soundbar remote. Same goes for the subwoofer and the speakers that's actually built into the soundbar. And that also includes the balance. So if you're having sound on one side, but you're not having sound on another, well, you might want to adjust the balance. And that's all built into the soundbar. The sound that's coming from the TV to the soundbar is just one straight shot. But if you adjust the volume on your TV, you know, the left channel and the right channel, yes, you will hear the adjustment as far as balance, but you can't control the rear and the sub through the TV. With that being said, when you hook up your rear speakers, you might have to do some adjustment on the volume because it's probably going to come out the box set to 0. So to adjust those rear speaker volume, you want to grab the remote that comes with your soundbar. And then you just want to adjust the volume to maybe 3 or 4, depend on how high those rear speakers go until you can hear it. But sit in the chair that you're going to be in when you adjust the volume. And make sure you play a movie that you can hear the actual surround sound. Because if you're watching something that's only putting out sound to the front speakers and not to the rear, then you're going to think that it's not working. So if you play a scene in a movie that you know there should be some sound coming to the back, then play that part of the movie. Even if you have to rewind a couple times to get that perfect volume set on your rear speaker. And refer to the manual that comes with your rear speakers or your soundbar to adjust those volumes because each manufacturer do things differently. Now, when you connect your soundbar to your TV using the HDMI ARC cable, 9 times out of 10, your soundbar is going to take over the sound from that point on and shut off the sound that's coming out your TV. So that should eliminate sound coming from the soundbar and the TV and you trying to play a balancing act. Now there's a setting inside your TV called HDMI CEC. If you see that setting and it's off, well, you need to flip it on. That's going to allow the soundbar to take over control of the volume of the TV. And that should eliminate the sound coming out of the soundbar and the TV at the same time. Now I can speak for the Samsung TV that if you got a Samsung soundbar and a Samsung TV, the soundbar will automatically take over control of the sound that's coming out of the TV. But yours might vary depending on what kind of TV you have and soundbar. So that's why I'm giving you that little bit of information that if it's not working the way that I'm explaining it, then you might have to go into the setting on your TV to make that happen. Okay, so now let's talk about the HDMI ARC port. If the HDMI ARC port on your TV is directly connected to the HDMI ARC on your soundbar, then there's nothing else to do. You don't need to select that port. You don't need to do anything. So whether you're watching TV directly or you're watching through the Fire Stick or you're playing a DVD or any other source, your Xbox, your PlayStation, you select those ports instead. So if your Xbox is connected to HDMI port 2, then select HDMI port 2. Don't worry about trying to select the port with the HDMI ARC. So what I'm trying to say is once you connect that HDMI ARC port to the soundbar and the TV, forget about it. It's going to take care of itself. So don't worry about trying to select it. If the HDMI ARC is port 1, don't select port 1. Select every other HDMI port. Because if you select port 1, and that's the HDMI ARC, you're not going to get anything at all because that's the one that's feeding the sound back and forth. Now on some soundbars, they do have HDMI inputs. So if your soundbar has a secondary HDMI input and you plug your Xbox in there instead, that's when you would select that port on your TV that says HDMI ARC. And if that's port 1, then use port 1. Now I hope I didn't confuse anybody on that one because it's very important that you don't select that HDMI ARC port unless you're using it. But something has to be plugged into the soundbar for you to select that port. Other than that, you select every other HDMI port that you have on the back of your TV. So I hope I made that a little bit clearer, because I was having some questions about that on that video that I did about hooking up the HDMI ARC port. And hopefully anybody else that's trying to do this now or in the future will understand how it actually works. Don't select the HDMI ARC input on your TV unless you have something connected to the soundbar HDMI port, which is the secondary port or the third port. Other than that, choose the HDMI inputs on your TV that you connect your Xbox, PlayStation, cable box, whatever else. All right? Clear? Clear. All right, so I think we already covered pretty much everything as far as the soundbar and setup and inputs and what you need to look for. And also make sure you turn the volume up on your rear speakers, because once you connect them, 9 times out of 10, they're already set to 0. Now, depending on how big your room is, you might have to adjust each one differently. So if you're getting too much bass, you might want to lower the bass down on your subwoofer, because you don't want the bass sound to be louder than anything else. You try to get everything at a balance. And that's why you have to grab that soundbar remote and make things adjustable. So you might have to adjust the speakers that's coming in front and the speakers on the side, because each soundbar, like I say, I have all kind of different stuff. I think my soundbar has got like 13 speakers. And I know some comes with 5, some come with 3, 4, whatever. So each soundbar has their particular adjustment. So look at your manual and find out how to adjust the volume of each one of those speakers. But like I said, adjust the volume on your rear speakers sitting in the chair where the rear speakers are. Don't try to adjust them from across the room, because they're meant to be in your ear kind of sound. Okay, so if you're going with the receiver that has hardwired speakers, the big giant speakers like I'm showing you right here that sits on the floor, and do you have regular rear speakers and everything, then those you're going to adjust through the receiver. So you have to take the sound that's coming out of your TV and feed it into the receiver or the amplifier. Now, there's many ways of doing this. If you have an HDMI output, you can do HDMI to RCA. If you have a newer receiver, 9 times out of 10, it has the HDMI ARC port already built in. And if it only has an optical connection, then you can use that instead. So the sound that's coming out of your TV, depend on what kind of TV you have and what kind of output it has. And then your receiver or your amplifier, depending on what kind of input it has. You just have to find the right cable that's going to get sound from the TV to the receiver or the amplifier. And if you have questions about that, you can leave it in the comment and I'll try to steer you in the right direction. Now, since your receiver and your amplifier have hardwired cables that's going to your speakers, then you can place those speakers close to the TV, left and right side. If you have a subwoofer that's hooked up to that receiver, then you can place that right in front, especially if it's hardwired, because you don't want wires running across your living room or wherever you have your TV. Now, if you have hardwired rear speakers, you don't want that wire running across. Like I said, you're trying to get that neat factor going on. So you want to get this device that you're looking at right now, and this is going to make your rear speakers wireless. So you're going to have one box connected to your receiver. It's going to hardwire into that rear speaker output, and then it's going to send the signal over to that other box where the rear speakers would be hardwired into, and then that's how the rear speakers is going to get its sound, and then you have a cleaner setup without having wires running from the front of your living room to the back. So if you want that clean look without any wires running from the front to the back of your room, then get this wireless connector. So that's how you're going to turn your rear speakers that's hardwired into wireless speakers. Oh, and if you have the HDMI ARC port on your receiver or amplifier, then you're going to be able to control the volume using just the TV remote. But if it doesn't have the HDMI ARC port, then you're on your own. You're going to be juggling 2 remotes. Or you can just turn down the volume on your TV and adjust it on your receiver or amplifier. And to really test it, you want to put in a movie that you think will have a lot of background sound. If you watch the movie in the movie theater, you know you can hear sound coming from the left, right, behind you, above you. And with that subwoofer in your setup, you get to hear those heavy bass sounds, so all those explosions and even heavy punches, you know, those rock hard body blows will be coming out of that subwoofer. So that's how you're going to test to see if everything is sounding right, and then start enjoying your home theater setup. Now, there's some shows and stuff like that that come on regular TV that doesn't take advantage of the rear speakers. So if you can't hear them, 9 times out of 10 is probably because that program doesn't have surround sound capability built into it. But if you know for a fact that you're watching something that has rear sound and you're not hearing it, then check your settings and check to make sure the rear speakers are plugged in, because 9 times out of 10 they're using a box like mine that's plugged into the wall. And that goes for the same with the one that's hardwired that you turn into wireless. So always check all your settings before you get frustrated and wonder why you're not hearing sound from here or there, or even pictures. Check those cables. Alright, so I hope this was helpful in some way of how to really set up your home theater setup. So go ahead, enjoy your home theater setup. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, like I said, leave it down in the comment section and I will answer it to the best of my ability. And if I can't, I'll point you in the right direction. The next video on this topic is going to be all about lighting. So I'm going to show you how I set up my LED lights and how I set up routines for when I want to watch movie and when the movie's over. Plus, I'm going to show you some options of how to add light to the back of your TV when you're enjoying your movies. So stay tuned to that video, because I'm going to add some routine to it that you can program into your voice assistant to make all of that stuff magical. Alright, so I want to thank you for taking the time for watching this video. Have a good one, and I'll see you next time.